Hello, welcome to Thoughtful Little Time Bombs. If I could ask you to subscribe, to share, to like, even comment, you are most welcome here. Let's get on with it. Hello, and welcome back to Thoughtful Little Time Bombs. I hope you're doing well. If you're returning, thank you very much. And if this is your first visit, then I'm glad to see you. Thank you for popping across. As this is Thoughtful Little Time Bombs. This is where we think about how we can achieve those dreams we've had for a long time and not been able to do something about because of responsibilities of work or health. And now we have time to reflect on those things that we haven't done and that we need to do something about. And I'm talking about things like traveling, I'm talking about language, learning language, acquiring language, writing, learning to dance, snorkeling, diving, those things that we've held on to for many, many years, even though we believed that they were impossible. And now with fewer years ahead of us than behind, it's surely time we did something about it. So that's what we're about, and it's about hopefully leaving you with little ideas that possibly may not make sense now, but about 2 o'clock in the morning it will just make absolute sense and you will find a way forward. As usual, I'll tell you that you are the expert in yourself. All I can do is drop these ideas and hopefully they're appropriate to you and what you want to do and how you're going to do it and where you're going to find the courage to do it. And the answer to that one is simple. You already have the courage. It's about having belief. Okay, so here we are once again, and I think we better get going. Okay, and as the man said, let us get going. 2 things. 1, regarding the cat, and 2, regarding a friend of mine from a long time ago. First of all, the cat. I want to know why the cat seems to grow about 3 foot extra in bed. Lies on the bed and it just takes up most of the duvet, and I'm having to sleep horizontally, which is not good because my body knows which way the bed is sorted out, and the cat should not be allowed such power and privilege. Ha ha ha. That's one point. So if you get advice on how to overcome that one, and don't even begin to think about throwing the cat out, because that won't work. And secondly, and this is the important one, I think. This is definitely the important one. Many years ago, I used to go snorkeling of an evening in summer with a friend, and we'd extend the season, and we'd go into the sea in its various states, but always with taking care where we went, and we'd keep an eye on each other. So we went snorkeling, and it's just off the coast here. The cliffs are about 15-20 foot at the highest, and the sea goes down at high tide at least 20-25 foot. And we used to go there snorkeling, and it was our escape from boring, tedious jobs and maybe people as well. And afterwards, it's just invigorating. And it's just fun, sort of down there dodging the crabs who are reaching up to do damage to your tackle. And afterwards we'd dry change, and we'd go to a pub that was nearby. And there's a Mancunian, a guy from Manchester, England, and he was great company. He was a great conversationalist. His son was there, his wife, and I think his daughter as well. But he was a remarkable man, and he could have a pint. What we used to do, we used to have a pint and a pickled egg, which is an appalling mix. And we'd have a couple of them, and this is years ago, before the limits were lowered. So we were well within the law. However, nowadays we wouldn't be. It was great company, and I think he was there for about a year and a half, and then he just went off abroad. He went off to Cyprus, I think, and to keep a pub, and successfully, might add. And every morning, after they cleared up, and every morning what he would do, he would get up in the beautiful morning sunshine with a big mug of coffee, and he'd wander across the concrete yard in the back to the chicken coop, and he'd go in and have a look, have a chat, make sure they had enough water, pick eggs, etc. And then he would wander across the yard, and he would just finish off his coffee in peace before the world got going. One night there was a bit of a tremor Cyprus is, I think it's on the Mediterranean Himalayan fault line. And anyway, so a bit of a rumble, they were used to it. So next morning, got up, cup of coffee in hand, everybody else asleep, and he went out and he walked across the yard towards the chicken coop, put his foot down on the concrete floor, and it gave way. And he fell 15, 20 foot down, broke his leg in several places, and leg was distorted. And because he got up so early, a couple of hours before everybody else, he had to lie there in agony for a couple of hours until he was rescued. And fire brigade came in, and they lifted him out. And it's remarkable. He was fixed. He was physically fixed. They put the bones together, plates and screws and whatever they do. I didn't know this until about 18 months later. When I came across him, he'd come back. And what I saw was this man who's aged by about 10 years, even though I'd seen him a couple of years earlier. He was looking in good form, and he was crippled. And his son told me what had happened. And I thought, he looked fit and well last time I saw him, and I was thinking, why is it taking him so long to recover? And I was speaking with his son, and we both worked it out, that something fundamental in his life had changed. A belief in his life had changed. Something fundamental, something fixed that should not have changed, had changed, and it had severely damaged his confidence in everything. One of the most basic beliefs we have about the Earth, the planet on which we live, is that if we put a foot on the ground, the planet might bounce a bit, but nothing else is going to happen. And so he had walked across the yard, as he had done for months and months, and he put his foot down, and all of a sudden the Earth could not hold him, and he went through. And from that moment on until a while after I saw him that second time, he was not secure enough in his mind to put his foot down. He had been scared, he had been traumatized, and that had been compounded by the injury. So every time he put his foot down, doesn't matter where it was, he expected the Earth to collapse and for him to fall again. Doesn't matter where he was, in his house, in his garden, abroad, walking around Manchester, doesn't matter what. His belief was that there was a good chance that the Earth upon which he walked would collapse around him and he would be injured once again. And it did incredible damage to his confidence. The good news is that he recovered fully. Well, let's say fully. I'm sure somewhere, every now and then, we all feel vulnerable, and maybe he would be thinking about where he was placing his foot next. But overall, he recovered and well and walked. I saw him in the market in the nearby town, and he looked well. Okay, and he was jovial, and he talked about it in detail, which is good, because he talked it out. He was as I said, a great conversationalist. And I was just wondering, in my own life, and probably in yours as well, we carry around these beliefs that are false, in a sense, that are false. The Earth is going to collapse beneath us. The sky is going to fall on our heads. If we've had our hearts broken once, it's pointless getting into a relationship because our heart will definitely be broken again. And the fear of loss. And these are beliefs that we carry about with us, and they have become obstacles. You have to do something about them, I suppose, because, as I say, in our little mindset crowd, there are fewer years ahead than behind, and we need to sort out these problems as soon as possible in order to actually start realizing those things that we put aside on behalf of other people. We need to sort these things out. And you can't And you can't logic your way out of these things. You just cannot logic your way out of these things and holding on to them. You got to ask yourself a simple question. Am I being brave holding on to these beliefs? Because the beliefs aren't holding on to me. Am I being brave holding on to these beliefs? And then you got to ask yourself, am I being falsely brave and inappropriately brave? And if I wasn't being brave, the problem wouldn't be here by now, maybe. Or are we holding on to it through sheer stupidity? That it's what we do. Our life now has to have this burden that we must carry with us. We do stupid things. We do brilliant things. And you can do brilliant things, but occasionally for extended periods in our life, we can do stupid things. We can hold on to strange, inappropriate, stupid beliefs about ourselves. And I wonder, do we look at others and impose these beliefs on them? No. I don't think we do. But we will impose these limits on ourselves, and it's not appropriate. And as I say, I want you to go climb Kilimanjaro. I want you to parachute with a parachute. I want you to dance. I want you to sing. I want you to bring joy wherever you go. One thing I did once I reached a certain age was I made a list of things I wanted to do. I hadn't done, but I wanted to do. And then I look, it's interesting because once you start writing a list, it triggers off memories of other things which you had actually forgotten about, which were once incredibly important to you. And they come back to the surface and you can test them to see if you want to do them. And it reminds me of what I said last time, which is dream quietly, plan quietly, act quietly. There will be resistance, and the greatest resistance will be in your own head to these things. As I said, there is a sense of self-preservation which is no longer appropriate because we don't live in that savage kind of world. And when you go down to your shortlist and you start reflecting on it, that's when the tension begins, because the conscious mind, restrictive mind, thinks it looks like you might even try doing this stuff. We have voices in here giving us instructions about when to do things, when not to do things, why we can't be good at something, why we shouldn't be happy, etc. And we never question them. So let's have look at voices. Let's reflect on voices, see where we are. If you were to think about it, all the limits in our lives come from things other people have told us, maybe events we've taken part in and lessons we've learned ourselves. Many of the things that we have heard are useful. It's about personal safety. It's about maybe pushing, maybe working hard to achieve. It could be about anything, and then occasionally they could be limiting, and it could be undermining of the self. And these are voices said by the things said by the voices of other people. And what I've said before is, why should we be listening to the voices of people who are no longer in our lives? They may even be dead. Or even worse, what they told us was never worth believing anyway. And why did we believe it in the first place? Well, when you're a kid, when you're a child, all adults are figures of authority. And when an adult tells you something, then accept it and you believe it and you incorporate it into your philosophy. Especially if it's restrictive, curiously. Families mostly encourage. Some families don't. Some families feel unlucky. And they pass that lack of luck or a belief of lack of luck on to children, their children. These are things that should be tested. Okay, and reality in your life, you will probably have proven these things wrong again and again. But what I found most intriguing, reflecting back on my own memories, is that certain people who I now know did not deserve respect had such a significant impact on my life. They would give instructions. They would say, don't do that, you can't do that. The usual stuff, limiting beliefs. And as I grew up and looked at these people, I realised that while they seemed to be friends of my parents, who were just two sterling good people, my parents didn't have all that much respect for them. They were just extending good courtesy, as the previous generation tended to do. And my generation, I think, and after my generation, I'm worried. So the advice I was getting from people my father told me afterwards was a clown. And yet I had lived with the limitations of the advice given by that person for many, many years, more than 20 years. And we don't realise we do it. An amusing story, in a sense, that involves horror and Disney, which you didn't expect that to go together. Went with my dad to see a film in the pictures many, many, many years ago. I think it was about 4. And all I remember is being in the cinema, which is dark, but with my dad, and which is fine, and the atmosphere in there, which was loud noise, resonant noise and images. It was brilliant. And then it became dark, it became moody, it became spooky. And all I remembered for over 20 years of that film was that the mountain opened up and these hordes of horsemen rode out and they came at the screen. And as a small kid, I didn't understand, hadn't been in the movies before, and it scared the bejesus out of me. And for many, many years, into my 20s, I would wake up and these horsemen would be coming towards me, and it would terrify me, and I would find it difficult to go back to sleep. And it kept recurring. It was a recurring dream of mountain opening up and these warriors, strange looking creatures on horseback racing towards me, and there's nothing I could do. I was watching telly one evening and some famous actor had died, and they showed part of the film he'd been in. He had been a Disney character. It was But Island, I remember rightly, and I think they were leprechauns, and the leprechauns were going to save somebody, and they were hiding in the mountain, and the gate opened in the mountain up the road. They weren't monsters, they weren't there to steal me away, they weren't there to take me away from my dad. It was just a Disney film, but I didn't know. And I carried that fear with me for over 20 years. Probably more than that, I'll be honest with you, more than that. An inappropriate belief that messed up sleep for many, many years, and it wasn't a belief that held on to me, it was a belief I held on to. And immediately I found out what it was gone. Never came back. So Baba Ram Das, formerly, I think it was Professor Richard Alpert, Dr. Richard Alpert, Harvard University, who in the 60s with Tim Leary went on to experiment with various drugs to liberate the mind, to find transcendent states, whether it is through the use of drugs or by meditation. I'll give him that. And Baba Ram Das, you should listen, find some stuff about him. Baba Ram Das, R-A-M-D-A-S-S, and it's B-A-B-A, Baba Ram Das. He's interesting because he's a very good speaker. And he's talking about spirit guides, and he's saying be wary of spirit guides. Be very wary of spirit guides because, self-professed spirit guides that come up to you or whisper in your ear, you must remember that if they were idiots in a previous life, it doesn't mean that they got smarter since they died. So be wary of anything a spirit guide tells you, and I think Baba Ram Das's example is, if your spirit guide tells you to buy into canned tuna and move to the Isles, I think it means Florida Keys, then be wary. And these voices of people long dead still haunt us, still control us. We disappear from sight, even in our own families, within a single generation. After a single generation, let's say your children, after they've gone, your grandchildren will not be tending to your grave. Okay? So it's something my mum pointed out as she had 2 placements for 2 pots on my father's gravestone, and she said it is far easier to put flowers nicely together in 1 pot than to try and get 2 pots to match. And I agree with her. I now tend to that grave and I'm useless. I do my best. The stone is always tidy and clean and respectful, and the flowers are never quite perfect. There we are. We leave only words. We leave memories that may not even attach to us. Things your children will have said about what you've done. My grandfather was a master plumber. My father was a plumber, qualified. I know things about plumbing. When I have to go and do something in my own house, I hear my dad and I don't know how to do it. I will sit down and I'll reflect on how my dad sorted problems out. And I'm sure that he used this word advisedly, he was channeling his own experiences with his own father, who was a master craftsman. And I'm doing the same. I hear my father rumbling in his deep bass voice. I hear him chuckle, and I can see his hands do the job, even if I've never seen him do that job. He has left me things which are intangible but real. So if you're gonna, it's almost worth saying that it's best to say nothing, because people will always misconstrue it. No. Should always speak of kindness and generosity and courtesy and good manners, because those will lubricate your way forward through all the years, and it doesn't matter who you are. Everything you've lived through in your life has value. You've learned to do things, you've learned what not to do. You've learned what skills you have, whether they're physical skills or intellectual skills. But we learn through every single moment of our life. And as I said, I think in the first one, our job is to give our life meaning. Okay. We'll stop there and we shall speak again. I'm trying to remember, a comedian said, until we have further speaks. That's it. Take care of yourselves. Be micro brave. Just do things. Be micro brave. Start making changes in your life. That is not advice. That is a voice in your own head talking to you, and you know it. Bye. Hi, before you go, if you'd be kind enough to subscribe, to like, to share, and even comment, I'd appreciate it very much. Thank you very much on behalf of myself and Shadow. He's having a kip, but I'm sure he'd be thanking you from the heart of his bottom. Have a good day. Have the best day.